All right, one more sleep, and the playoffs begin. The 49ers and the Seahawks open the slate for the NFL at 1:35 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow. So 4:35 p.m. if you're out on the East Coast, 3:35 p.m. if you're in the Central time zone. We'll shout out to Margot and her family out there in the Central time zone tomorrow watching in Nashville, and 2:35 p.m. if you are in Mountain Time. Europe, well, I got to add 9 hours if you're on the mainland, right? So 1:35 plus 9, 10:35 p.m. You're going to have a late night. If you're watching in the Czech Republic, Prague, shout out to you, Germany, wherever. And London, I'm sure there are plenty of fans out there. That's going to be an hour earlier than that. So 9:35 p.m. If you're in Australia or Japan, sorry, I can't help you. It's too complicated of a conversion. Either way, 49ers football is happening in less than 24 hours. In fact, in less than 24 hours, we will know the result of 49ers Seahawks. We'll know which of these two teams is moving on. The 49ers are obviously heavily favored in this first round, favored by 9.5 points in this game against the Seattle Seahawks. So I'm going to open this one up to questions a little bit earlier as people start filtering in. We can get to them. I have a couple things that I would want to show you, though, just as background, maybe for some of your questions. And they're both either a table or a graph. They're two graphics that I'm going to put up onto this screen. So let's take a quick look. First at team tiers. This is an interesting one from weeks 14 onward, because a lot of the national media seems to be trying to hype this game up, and they're trying to say, oh, the Seattle Seahawks are playing great football. It's a bad matchup for the 49ers. So I was like, wait, I saw the Seahawks team in week 15. They weren't playing great football against the 49ers. They also, had a bad loss thrown in there, and they barely beat the Rams and Baker Mayfield in overtime with everything on the line. I didn't really believe that narrative, and I wanted to see what the data said. These are NFL team tiers since week 14, and I think this is a fair split to make, because week 14 is actually when Brock Purdy took over as the 49ers starting quarterback. That's the game against Tampa. And week 14 is also when Geno Smith really began struggling. Geno Smith was a top 8 efficiency QB until week 14, and he's had a bad finish to the season based on the numbers. He actually finished number 14 in EPA per dropback. So I thought this was a very fair split, weeks 14 to 18, team tiers, to see exactly how the Seahawks were playing. Let's open it up by saying that the 49ers are over here, top right. You want to be as far to the right as possible. That's offense performance. And as far up as possible. That's defense performance. Top right is where you want to be. This is delineated by diagonal lines. Those diagonal lines show team tiers. The 49ers are in a tier of their own. They might even be in a separate tier of their own. Look, half of their logo is on the side of this line, which would put them a full tier. There's a whole tier gap ahead of the third tier, Kansas City. So say the 49ers are up here, their first tier. Second tier is essentially empty, half of the 49ers logo. Third tier, Jacksonville, Kansas City, Buffalo, the teams who finished the season playing really well. So where are the Seahawks, you might ask? The Seahawks are way over here. They've been a below average football team. So I don't get where this talk of, oh, the Seahawks are playing really well is coming from. You have to count the tiers, and it's not an easy count to figure out how low the Seahawks are. So the 49ers tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The Seattle Seahawks are a tier 7 football team with a below average offense and a slightly below average defense ever since week 14. And that's when the 49ers have gone through Purdy mania. And, even with a larger sample, the 49ers are in the upper right over the course of the whole season. But it's especially pronounced if you look at the 49ers since week 14. So that's the first thing I have to say as background for this matchup. The second thing is zoom in on Seattle's efficiency. This comes from my preview article. Blue is good, red is bad. This is defense adjusted value over average from Football Outsiders, DVOA. Here is the Seahawks profile. It's one that you're probably already familiar with because we talked about it before the 49ers in Seattle played in week 15. But the Seahawks are very slightly above average offensively. They finished the regular season number 14. Pass offense number 8. So a little bit better based on the defense adjusted value over average than the EPA numbers for Geno Smith, which were number 14. But still, it's dropped off from the top 5. The run offense with K9, Kenneth Walker, number 23. They haven't been efficient in the run game. although he's had some better games as of late, over 100 yards. And the defense, there's red across the board here. The defense for the Seattle Seahawks has not been good. Number 21 overall, 17 against the pass. It helps to have a good young rookie and Tariq Woolen. But the run defense has been an issue for the Seattle Seahawks, number 25. Now, I've preached this all week. One area where the 49ers really have to be careful, because you could see they have a tremendous advantage on paper in this game. They've really got to be careful about special teams. We know all about Kyle Williams and the great equalizer that rain plus special teams miscues can have. The Seahawks, always good on special teams, always give the 49ers trouble in that phase of the game. They're ranked number 4 in special teams DVOA. And I think that this game might take a couple special teams catastrophes for the 49ers to lose, but we can never rule special teams catastrophes out of the equation, especially in wet weather. The Seahawks overall profile is a number 10 DVOA ranking, and they're playing the number 1 49ers, who are 1 on offense, 1 on defense since picking up Christian McCaffrey, and I think number 7 on special teams. So as you can see, the 49ers advantage in this game is pronounced. It's why my prediction is 49ers 27, Seahawks 10. We'll see if I'm correct tomorrow, but the 49ers have notched 10 straight wins. So I think it's very reasonable to expect them to roll in this game, and we'll see if they can avoid a fluke tomorrow against the Seattle Seahawks after beating them 2 straight times. Before I get to the questions, news today, Talanoa Hufanga is a first-team All-Pro. Really, to me, that was surprising. He's there. There's only 2 of them in the entire NFL. It's Minkah Fitzpatrick from Pittsburgh and Hufanga from the 49ers. And Christian McCaffrey snubbed again. Not a first-team All-Pro, nor is he a second-team All-Pro. And that really is too bad. All right, let's move on to the 49ers Seahawks Q&A. We're 7 minutes into this sucker. Brian Smith, is there any such thing as a playoff trap game, or is that an oxymoron? I tend to think it's an oxymoron, especially if you have a good coaching staff that has guys focused for the playoffs. So, I mean, if the 49ers lose tomorrow, I don't think it's going to be because they didn't show up ready to play this game. So, I mean, the other team is paid too, and mistakes happen in the chaotic nature of a football field, and it could be wet tomorrow, right? Wet weather. Couple fumbles, couple interceptions, rookie quarterback, all of a sudden the Seattle can start having a chance to get some confidence, and the 49ers can lose. That's why they play these games. They could be big favorites 9 times out of 10. The 49ers can blow Seattle out, but there is a world in which a lot of stuff conspires against the 49ers and Seattle pulls out a miraculous victory. I talked about how this rivalry really started, right? It went back to the pre-49ers Seahawks days. Jim Harbaugh was the coach of Stanford. Pete Carroll was the coach of USC. This was the first game I ever called as a student radio broadcaster on the road. I was a sophomore at Stanford, and I'm a student radio announcer. I'm the analyst. I'm the color announcer, right? We head down to the LA Coliseum. Stanford's quarterback the week prior, his name was T.C. Ostrander, had a seizure while eating sushi. The Stanford, by the way, had lost its prior game 41-3. They're coming off of a 1-11 season. They'd lost to Arizona State 41-3, and their starting QB had a seizure while eating sushi. So he wasn't going to play against USC. The Stanford Cardinal also had a ton of other injuries. So they ended up entering this game against number 2 SC, coached by Pete Carroll, as 41-point underdogs. They were going to start a true sophomore. His name was Tavita Pritchard, skinny true sophomore, for his first college start. Heading into the Coliseum, USC is still USC back then. The USC would still go to the Rose Bowl this year. So this was still Pete Carroll USC. So Stanford was a 41-point underdog heading into the Coliseum. Harbaugh was Stanford's coach. Pete Carroll was USC's coach. What I saw transpire over the next 60 minutes, I will never forget. Road game, hostile conditions. Stanford fans were not out of the woodwork yet, so they had a few dozen fans at most in the stadium, 90,000 plus SC fans, but the magic was on Stanford's side, and they hung around. For 30 minutes, they hung around. They're down, I think, only by 6 entering halftime, even though it was clear USC had so much more talent than them. I mean, it was night and day when you looked at the talent, but somehow USC had a fumble here, a mistake there. Oh, and then their quarterback, John David Booty, broke his finger, chipped his finger while throwing a football off of a defender's helmet. So they pressured him and he chipped his finger. But he decided to stay in the game. He didn't remove himself in the game. Mark Sanchez was the backup at the time. Maybe he was afraid that Mark Sanchez would take his job. But over the course of the second half, It went from 1 interception to 2 interceptions to 3 interceptions to a pick 6. John David Moody ended up throwing 5 interceptions to this Stanford team. And then all of a sudden, after the 4th interception, Stanford was sitting there down 23-17 with the football and about 2.5 minutes to play with their sophomore quarterback, right? With their skinny sophomore quarterback. They had no business in hell of being in this football game, but there they were. They had a chance. They had dragged USC to deep water. They had a chance to pounce. And that is what the 49ers must avoid tomorrow. I'm not saying they're 41-point favorites over the Seahawks. They're smaller favorites, but it makes that lesson all the more applicable, right? If you want to know how the story ends, I'm sure most of you already know how it ends, but this young quarterback started driving the Stanford Cardinal down the field in the din of the Coliseum. It was loud in there, but the people were nervous because the underdog here, the 41-point underdog, was moving down the field. And then there was about a minute to go, and it was 4th and 20, and everybody said, oh, Stanford, there's no way that Stanford's going to pick up this first down. They finally, it was a spirited comeback attempt, give them the round of applause. This quarterback, there's no chance against this USC defense, which featured Taylor Mays, by the way, future 49er Taylor Mays. There's no chance that this USC defense is going to let up 4th and 20 with the crowd on their side. But Stanford had a secret weapon. He was still a sophomore at the time, wasn't a freshman anymore. He was a receiver. He was from Compton. His name was Richard Sherman, and he was playing against Pete Carroll. And on 4th and 20, it was so loud in the Coliseum that nobody in the Stanford huddle, including the quarterback, could hear the play call. There was so much confusion and so much noise that Stanford's quarterback, Tavita Pritchard, could not hear the play call for 4th and 20. So they lined up. He didn't want to take a delay a game penalty. And he just said, I'm going to wing it. I'm going to hope that Richard Sherman, the wideout, before he converted to cornerback, I'm going to hope that he's open 20 yards downfield. I'm just going to throw it over the middle of the field, basically with my eyes closed. So Pritchard drops back to pass, feels some pressure, uncorks the football because Sherman's running in the direction, kind of a skinny post over the middle of the field. And he catches the football 20 yards, exactly 20 yards downfield, and he gets crunched by about 2 or 3 guys at once. And he holds on to the football. And nobody's sure where he went down. It turned out that he gained 20 yards and 1 inch. So, first down. Miracle, right? Richard Sherman, part of this 49ers Seahawks story for sure. Well, this was the precursor back in 2007. Stanford then had 4 downs to get it into the end zone from 1st and goal. And finally, on 4th and goal, this is the kind of stuff you can't make up. On 4th and goal, Pritchard hit Mark Bradford, who was their receiver, on a fade. Bradford was from Los Angeles, USC football territory, and his father had passed away that week. And Stanford won 24-23. I think there's been a bigger upset since then, but at the time, the 41-point spread that Stanford overcame was the biggest point spread ever overcome. And that really fueled the rivalry that we see today between 49ers and Seahawks, because Harbaugh and Pete Carroll went at it again in college. That was the launching victory for Stanford's program under Harbaugh, right? Going into the Coliseum, beating SC 24-23. And 2 years later, Stanford was locked, loaded, and ready to go. They came back into the Coliseum. They spanked USC. Harbaugh went for 2 to try to hang 50 on the Trojans. Pete Carroll said, "What's your deal?" Harbaugh was like, "I don't know. What's your deal?" And then they both ended up going to the NFL. And that's when the 49ers-Seahawks rivalry started. But the 49ers-Seahawks rivalry, I think, was so intense because the coaches hated each other so much. And they hated each other so much because of what started in 2007 between Stanford and USC. Fast forward, Harbaugh's been at Michigan for a really long time now. It's a new coaching staff for the 49ers, several new coaching staffs. But Carroll is still with the Seahawks. So there's still, this history still lives on. Richard Sherman has since played for both teams. Richard Sherman crushed the 49ers in 2013, but obviously helped boost the 49ers to the Super Bowl in 2019. So there's so much intertwined history between Stanford, USC, 49ers, Seahawks. It's crazy. And I illustrate it all to say, hey, the 49ers are big-time favorites in this game, but upsets can happen. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a trap game for that upset to happen. So it's a much smaller spread than the one that Stanford overcame in 2007 against Pete Carroll. And you could be sure that Pete Carroll would like to notch a big upset of his own all these years later against the 49ers, even with Harbaugh now gone. So it's, that's quite the story. It took me about 8 or 9 minutes to deliver it. I peeked down at the clock here, but for me, it's cool because everything came so full circle. Again, that was the student radio announcer at that game that I just described to you. Still have some of the clips from it back in the day, and it was sitting up on the roof of the Coliseum. It was so cool. They don't have a room for student radio in the press box. Sitting up in the roof of the old Coliseum before they renovated the place, and now I'm here covering the 49ers, and Pete Carroll is still around. I think he recently turned 70, right? So it's been quite the football journey, especially covering Richard Sherman for a period of time at Stanford and then again with the 49ers. And you could obviously talk about Sherman with the Seahawks in 2013, but the 49ers trying to get franchise vengeance of their own, right? This is the second time they played the Seahawks in the postseason. The first time didn't go well because of Richard Sherman and Malcolm Smith, who both ended up becoming 49ers later down the road. And if we really want to get crazy with the connections, then Pete Carroll, he's from Marin County. Born in San Francisco, raised in Marin County, went to College of Marin, and was high school classmates at Redwood High School in Larkspur with Robin Williams, of all people, the late Robin Williams. Pete Carroll and Robin Williams are the same age. So Pete Carroll was the 49ers defensive coordinator in 95 and 96, but he's from the Bay Area. Obviously grew up, I would expect, watching the 49ers, probably in the Kezar days for Pete Carroll. So the history here, the intertwined history is so cool, and I can't wait for this game tomorrow. Pete is 71 now. Okay, I was a year off. I knew he had recently turned 70. Are there any positions on offense or defense where the Seahawks have a more talented player? I don't think so. Let's go through them. QB, no. I'd put Purdy, based on what I've seen, ahead of Geno Smith. Offensive line, no. Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas, you might say they're first-round picks, they're rookies. One of them might be a little bit more talented than McGlinchey, but McGlinchey showed up this year in pass protection. So I'm not going to go ahead. I'm not going to make that proclamation. I really think that the 49ers are stronger at the tackle positions. The interior line, right guard is a little bit of a sketchy spot for the 49ers, a little bit because of lack of experience, a little bit because of some injury situations. But I think they're going to be back to the Brunskill Burford rotation, which makes you feel better about that. Now, a receiver, Tyler Lockett, is objectively one of the best in the game. So you could maybe give that to Seattle. Tyler Lockett as a receiver might be better as a pure wideout than Brandon Ayuk or anybody that the 49ers have. But the they have Lockett, they have DK Metcalf, the Seahawks do. But the 49ers have so many weapons to kind of just outnumber that. So you look at, you just go down the list. You look at Ayuk, you look at Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Ray McLeod, Jawan Jennings, Christian McCaffrey, can't forget him. I mean, the 49ers are so loaded that, yeah, maybe Seattle at one high end of things has an advantage featuring Tyler Lockett. But is that really, enough to outweigh what the 49ers have? And I don't think it is. Defensive side of the ball, Tariq Woolen's had a really nice year, several interceptions, rookie cornerback. The 49ers counter with Charvarius Ward. Seattle's sketchy on the other corner side. 49ers obviously are as well. We look at Deommodore Lenoir. They called up Jackrabbit Jenkins, emergency corner for this game. He might see some special teams action. We'll see tomorrow. It's Jenkins and Tevin Coleman who got the call from the practice squad. Doesn't necessarily mean that either of them, especially Coleman, are going to be on the active roster. They get a nice little pay bump, so it's a way to reward some veterans for not being on the practice squad, and it doesn't count against the salary cap since it's the playoffs, so we'll see if that happens. But anyway, let's move on. Linebacker, no. Jordan Brooks is out, ACL for Seattle. Obviously, 49ers win there. Obviously, they went on the defensive line. I mean, you look at Darrell Taylor and Uchenna Nwosu coming off the edge. If you're any coach in this game, you'd rather have Bosa and whoever the 49ers are offering. So the 49ers are more talented there. Quandre Diggs can be a little bit of a ball hawk at safety. But the 49ers now have an all-pro, Talanoa Hufanga. Deshaun Gibson has 6 picks. So, yes, the 49ers are more talented across the board, and there's a reason why they're favored in this game. If there's an unsung hero on the 49ers, who would I think it's going to be? Ray McLeod tomorrow. I don't think people are going to be talking enough about if he has a clean game fielding punts and kicks. It's going to be a big advantage because Seattle's going to be looking for a dirty game from the 49ers. They're going to be looking for some turnovers on special teams. Again, Seattle's a good special teams unit. So McLeod doesn't necessarily have to have a flashy game, but he has to have a solid one. We all remember Kyle Williams in the rain, right? So my call is Ray McLeod. He could be the unsung hero for the 49ers tomorrow in a workmanlike victory. Who do I have winning for all this weekend's playoff matchups? This is good. Maybe we could cut this up into a separate video for all these predictions. But yeah, let's go through all of them. Let's go to the NFL playoff bracket. I'm going to go through all the matchups, and we're going to talk about winners for this week. All right, you guys ready? Here we go. My predictions for the playoffs this weekend. Starting with 49ers against the Seahawks. That one is easy. That one you probably already know. I think the 49ers are going to beat the Seahawks 27-10. Now I'm going to look through all these other games. Jacksonville against the Chargers. That's going to be the nightcap tomorrow on the AFC side. And, you know, I love Justin Herbert. I think that Trevor Lawrence has made big strides this year. And the Jacksonville team as a whole has made big strides this year. I do think, though, that Herbert is a little bit more of a node commodity right now than Trevor Lawrence. And I don't trust either of the two rosters enough to give one team a distinct advantage of the other, irregardless of quarterback. So I'm going to go with the Chargers beating the Jacksonville Jaguars in the game that happens a little bit later at night, the nightcap to the 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. Then we have Cincinnati, Baltimore. We just saw that one take place this past week. I think it's clear that Joe Burrow and Cincinnati are better than injury-ravaged Baltimore. So we're going to give this one to the Bengals. The Bengals are going to beat the Ravens. Buffalo and Miami. No Tua for Miami. They're leaking oil. They were almost able to beat Buffalo with Tua Tagovailoa a few weeks ago in that epic snow game in Buffalo, but not going to happen in this one. The Buffalo Bills are going to roll. Tampa Bay and Dallas. That's the Monday night game. I know I'm going out of order right now, but I'm just looking at the bracket, going through the games. Tampa Bay and Dallas is going to be the capper for the entire weekend. And this one, to me, is as much of a toss-up as any, because I really like Tampa Bay's defense. I really think that Tom Brady's a deadline pressure kind of QB. You saw it with the performances to end the regular season and push the Buccaneers into the playoffs. And we saw it last year when they lost to the Rams. They got behind big, but Brady brought them back, and it got into overtime. So the Buccaneers might not be as strong as they were a couple years ago when they won their Super Bowl, but they still have Brady playing on deadline pressure against the Dallas team that has shown some cracks, real cracks, defensively. So to me, it comes down to Tom Brady against Dak Prescott. And I saw Dak Prescott get outplayed by an injured Jimmy Garoppolo in the playoffs last season. Tampa Bay's also at home in this game. I like the Buccaneers. I'm not going to bet against Tom Brady on Monday night. So I'm going to pick the Buccaneers, the 4 seed, over the 5 seed Dallas. Then we're going to have another upset special. Minnesota and the New York Giants. This one, I'll stick my neck out a little bit. It's the 3 seed Vikings against the 6 seed Giants. Who's going to win it? You know, I really think that the Minnesota Vikings are the most overvalued 3 seed that there's ever been. They are the only 13-win team in NFL history to have a negative point differential. So just let that sink in. The Minnesota Vikings haven't been good. They were lucky to hold on to the number 2 seed for as long as they did because they had that big comeback against the Colts. They ended up paying the price against the Packers. And, you know, they even struggled a little bit with the Bears last week, and it was the Bears with Nathan Peterman. Meanwhile, the New York Giants are cutting off some rest, right? We know that the New York Giants circled the wagons and didn't try to beat Philadelphia, which didn't make the 49ers all too happy. But they should come in with decently fresh legs. They get to play a clean game in the Dome. I mean, I could even look at the DVOA matchup. Let's look what the DVOA matchup between the New York Giants and the Minnesota Vikings is going to be, because I can guarantee you that it's going to be much more favorable to the New York Giants than you would expect based on the records of these two teams. So let's see where both of these teams are ranked. The New York Giants are number 21 DVOA, and the Minnesota Vikings are number 27. The Minnesota Vikings finished the season 13-4 with the number 27 DVOA. So that just, I mean, they won like 10 one-score games. They obviously got very lucky this season. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's mind-blowing to me. Negative point differential, number 27 DVOA, and they finished 13-4. Meanwhile, the New York Giants DVOA wise, number 21 and a 9-7-1 record. So I'm going Giants over the Minnesota Vikings, and that's going to allow the 49ers to play Sunday of the following week. And that's going to be big for the 49ers. Finally, 49ers. Sorry, wrong one. I have one more game, right, to pick. 49ers Seahawks. That's what I already have on the screen. 49ers going to beat the Seahawks 27-10. So those are my predictions for the weekend. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. But if the New York Giants do beat the Minnesota Vikings, then what would happen is the 49ers would play the winner of Dallas, Tampa Bay. And based on my predictions, that would mean 49ers Purdy Brady rematch at Levi's Stadium against the Buccaneers in the second round of the playoffs. And it'd be hold your breath time because, Tom Brady would be coming back for revenge in the playoffs. That would be crazy. So the playoffs are about to enter overdrive. Let's just say that, especially if the 49ers can hold, serve, and win against the Seahawks tomorrow. Eric Gomes, regular viewer, wants to see good games overall. Floyd the Barber has a good stat. Hi, Floyd. Geno Smith has fumbled 8 times this year and 30 times in 51 career starts. Predict the turnovers for each team. Well, last week, the 49ers were +4 in the turnover department. They didn't give away the ball, and they picked up 3 turnovers. Fumble, recovered by Michael Dwumfor, forced by Jordan Willis, and then 3 picks, right? 2 for Tashawn Gibson, and then 1 at the end for George Odom. But 49ers finished number 1 in turnover differential this year. That's huge. Entering the playoffs is the first time they've ranked that high under Shanahan and close to that high under Shanahan. So that number 1 in turnover differential is big. They're going to win turnovers tomorrow, I think. But I do think they give it away once in the rain tomorrow. I think Seattle will scheme up a takeaway tomorrow. 1 turnover for the 49ers, 3 for the Seahawks. I think 49ers go +2 tomorrow. That is my prediction. It's all about the ball. The 49ers have the ball meeting every week, and the coach who presides over it, Nick Sorensen, they call him the Ball Father. What a great name, the Ball Father. Looking for more questions here, just kind of perusing them. Let's see, what's a good question to ask? Growing in viewers. Here's a fun fact. The Seahawks have only won 1 game this season on a grass field. Wonder why that is. I know Pete Carroll is really happy about his team's speed entering this season. And I know if you're playing on turf, that can help a fast team, a fast track. So maybe the grass fields have slowed down the Seahawks team's speed. Tomorrow it's going to be a grass field, and it's going to be a wet grass field if the forecast holds. And I'm sure it will be. We haven't seen pure sun here in the Bay Area for quite some time, even on the day that it didn't rain. I guess we saw some sun then, but it hasn't been sunshiny California that we're normally used to this January. Are they giving out rally towels tomorrow? I'm not sure. Did they give them out last playoffs? If yes, then I would expect that. Need the towel to stay dry. Would I like to see a Bosa versus Bosa Super Bowl? I mean, that'd be cool. I don't care. I like stuff to write about. And that definitely would be something to write about in the Super Bowl. But the Chargers would have to upset quite a few teams to get it all through there. D-Flow wants to post a question here, but he's putting way too many emojis, and those aren't going to show up for him. Christian McCaffrey getting snubbed for All-Pro, extra motivation for him. That's what George Kittle thinks. He's like, hey, just get Christian McCaffrey even more mad. He's just been dominant while he's been mad. Keep on keeping on with that. Everybody, while you're here, hit the like button, obviously. Subscribe to The Athletic. Check me out on Twitter. We're over 600 now. Night before the game, wanted to give everybody a nice little relaxing night in. Let you chill a little bit. Let you just hang out as we peruse 49ers Seahawks questions. Those of you just joining, this is my prediction for 49ers Seahawks 27-10. And a little bit earlier, I went through this. We went through the DVOA profile for the Seattle Seahawks. As you could see, decent on offense, but the run game hasn't been good. That plays right into the 49ers' hands. That's why, the key stat for me is the 49ers through 2 games against the Seahawks have racked up 45 pressures, and Seattle, the other way, has only generated 11 pressures against the 49ers. 45 versus 11. I mean, mind-blowing, right? 45 versus 11 on the pressure front. And you could see why. Seattle struggles to run. 49ers are great at stopping the run. Seattle struggles to play defense. 49ers tear apart teams that struggle to play defense and rush the passer. And the 49ers obviously excel everywhere. So they have dominated Seattle at the line of scrimmage. And that's why I think that the score is going to be what was just down on the screen, 27-10. I think it's going to be a handy 49ers victory. Now, I also put up team tiers here. 49ers have been a tier 1 team over on the upper right since Brock Purdy took over in week 14. And since then, that's when Geno Smith began his true downturn. Seattle's been a tier 7 team. So, big discrepancy right there. Definitely something to keep an eye on. All right, let's go back to the questions. What does DVOA mean? DVOA means defense adjusted value over average. It comes from Football Outsiders, and it's going to be more sophisticated than just measuring yards or touchdowns. It's going to measure, hey, if it's 3rd and 3 and a team picks up 4 yards, it will reward the team for picking up 4 yards. You get a good rating on that play. But if it's 3rd and 6 and a team picks up 4 yards, well, that's not worth as much because you have to punt generally, right? So DVOA takes into account down and distance, and it also takes into account the strength of schedule. So defense adjusted, or in the case of offense, it's offense adjusted, or in the case of defense, it's offense adjusted. You're taking into account the unit that you're facing when you come up with a final efficiency measurement. So DVOA is going to give us a much better idea of how strong a particular unit is than raw yardage. Somebody the other day tried to tell me that the 49ers have given up the 21st, they're number 21 in pass defense because of yards per game given up. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Because the 49ers are ahead in so many of their games that it's garbage time early. They won 10 straight games by an average of 17 points. So, of course, they're going to give up more passing yards because they're going to be playing prevent defense with a big lead, and teams are going to be racking up passing yardage. So looking at yards allowed in the pass game without any more detailed qualifiers is very misleading. But if you look at DVOA, it's going to be able to take into account garbage time. It's going to be able to take into account garbage yardage. And the 49ers by DVOA ranked as the number 5 pass defense in football this year. So number 5 is a whole lot better than number 21 and definitely a whole lot more representative of how the 49ers are doing. Hope that explains it well. I like this. Here, where was this? You sound so biased for biased, by the way, ED. For what? For explaining stats? Hey, if the numbers don't agree, maybe the people who are upset about that are the biased ones, not the people who look at the numbers, which do reflect a good portion of truth. Juanito thinks the 49ers are going to beat Seattle 31-17. Why did the 49ers get the Saturday game? Isn't it unfair that they get another short week? Well, look at it this way. They could actually be an advantage in the long run because but the Seahawks have the same short week. So that's even, right? If the 49ers win here, they're going to get, I think, and they're going to get either a full week to next Saturday if the Vikings win, and the Vikings will have to come off of a short week. So the 49ers will have an advantage. Or if the Vikings lose, the 49ers might not play until the following Sunday, in which case they'll get a week plus. So it's a shorter period of rest, even though it's not a disadvantage against the Seahawks, relatively speaking. There's a shorter week of rest to set up a longer week of rest. And that's the coveted position that you want to be in going wild card weekend into the divisional round. When was the last time the 49ers played the Seahawks in the playoffs? I don't know if you're serious about this question or if you're a Seahawks fan just trying to rub it in to all the 49ers fans watching, but it was in January 2014, NFC Championship game. Richard Sherman delivering the tip and then the pick. They call it the immaculate deflection. I learned something new every day. That's what I learned yesterday. What should the Seahawks do to slow down the 49ers offense? Throw the kitchen sink at Brock Purdy and hope that something hits. Hope you could get a couple turnovers. Hope that you could hurt Brock Purdy's confidence and go from there. Am I expecting Deebo Samuel to get a lot of touches tomorrow? I don't know. It's just going to depend on what kind of defense the Seahawks show up in. You have to pick your poison defending the 49ers. You're going to focus on, one or two of the guys. It's the guy that's not getting focused on that should get the football. Brock Purdy has to play point guard. So we'll see where in that whole mix Deebo Samuel lies. John Mack thinks that Christian McCaffrey will carry the team on his back. I don't think he'll need to. I think the 49ers will have a lot of weapons. They didn't have Deebo against Seattle in Week 15. McCaffrey got a ton of touches. He was the gravitational pull for the 49ers offense in that game, but I don't think it has to resort to that. Since Week 10, he looked up some stats for me. I appreciate it. DVOA, 49ers number 2. Seahawks number 18. Is this defense? Oh, yeah. I think you're giving me defense, right? Yeah, 49ers number 2 because 49ers number 1 overall. Defense is 2. Seahawks are number 18. And then EPA per play, 49ers are number 1. Seahawks are number 22. Yeah, so you're dealing with a mismatch statistically in this football game. David Yang says Kittle has his best games against the Seahawks. Robert, I'm so pumped for this game. Yeah, I think a lot of people are. Pumped for the playoffs, that's for sure. I don't think Coleman will be involved in the offense. I think he's either being called up for a hat tip, kind of pay purposes. He gets a little bit more money, or he's being called up to help bolster the special teams if he's active. He's not going to be high enough in the running back rotation to play, though, without an injury, even if he does play, in my opinion. Because even if you sit Ty Davis Price, make him inactive, and Coleman is playing, you still have McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, and Jordan Mason in front of him. Do I think that we'll see both McCaffrey and Mitchell in the backfield tomorrow? I think we'll see them both in the game. I'm not sure if we'll see them both in the same time. I think Kyle will run some stuff that's going to strain the Seahawks defense. But at the same time, if the 49ers come out gangbusters early on, right, and are dominating the Seahawks, he might not show quite everything. He might save some of that dual running back stuff for later in the playoffs. So we'll just see how the game flows tomorrow. Trey Greenlaw's fully healthy again. He looked good in practice. 49ers are as healthy as they've been this year, really, except for no Emmanuel Mosley. So 49ers seem to be peaking at the right time as far as the flow of the roster being as available as possible. Who backs up the center if Jake Brendel is out for a play or two? If Zakel is up, that he's the center of the future, but it's Brunskill as the immediate backup. Daniel Brunskill is the 49ers second string center. And the good news there is that Burford has been trained to play a lot of right guard. He will be playing right guard. And you rotate Brunskill in to keep Brunskill active. But if you need to, Daniel Brunskill slides into center if Jake Brendel is hurt. And then the center of the future, they're hoping that Nick Zakel's that guy. They say that he takes people over mentally. That's what you need from the center position. Of course. I mean, the pass always has to try to set up the run. Even if it's wet, you've got to keep that defense honest. So I do think that Brock Purdy is going to be asked to throw a little bit. The 49ers have been going past to set up the run throughout this entire back half of the season. They made the big adjustment against Arizona and Mexico City with Garoppolo when he threw on 14 of 15 plays. That opened it up. That pass to set up the run has to happen if the defense is really stacking the box with those 6-man fronts. The 49ers are going to count on Purdy to do some of that stuff tomorrow. Mike Fuss thinks that Jimmy Ward's going to have a pick 6 tomorrow. That'd be crazy. Zakel is Purdy's roommate. Yes, just saw a question there. Which is scarier, 49ers offense or defense? I think it's about equal at this point, which is a really good situation to have. You have a balanced football team. Haven't had a chance to see the Les Boatwright story yet. We'll take a look at that at some point. Appreciate this right here. Thank you. That's awesome. 49ers are indeed stacked. Eric, you are correct. Purdy's no stranger to rain or snow games playing at Iowa State. Not Iowa. George Kittle will get mad if you say Iowa. He played at Iowa State, Brock Purdy did. The Iowa State Cyclones. Funny enough, the Cyclones, it's kind of what seems to be hitting the Bay Area here, and Purdy's going to have to play through his college mascot, the Cyclones. Which quarterback would I compare Brock Purdy to? I've done this before. He's got a lot of Jimmy Garoppolo in him, which has made the transition seamless. We talk about short range gunslinger, trying to fit the ball into small windows, quick release. That's great, but he's quicker than Garoppolo, right? Like athletically, he's quicker than Garoppolo. So he's a hybrid, that's for sure. That's why Steve Young said he's got some Patrick Mahomes in him because of the way that he moves and he improvises. There's a higher ceiling than Garoppolo, but currently a lower floor too. So the similarities with Jimmy have been important to the 49ers, but some of the dissimilarities have actually opened the door for a lot of exciting stuff for the 49ers and exciting future prospects as well with Brock Purdy. How would I describe Shanahan's play calling and style? He's taking what the defense is given to him. And he's just going to go with the numbers. If they're going one heavy against the run, he's going to go pass. If they're going to sit back with two safeties, too deep, he's going to go run. It's actually relatively simple what he calls. People will get mad, but Kyle Shanahan's not going to try to play a losing numbers game. He's going to try to play the winning numbers game. And I think that's what's consistent and relatively simple about it. But then within that, you have a lot of complexity within those individual plays. Drew Brees is Dan Nelson's comparison. I mean, that's high praise. Drew Brees is going to be a Hall of Famer. So I get it. I get the skill set. He's shorter, right? He is good in short areas. I think he's a little bit, Drew, when he was younger, I guess moved a little bit more quickly, but Drew more of a pocket passer. Purdy can move. That 1.55 10-yard split is no joke. He's got quickness. He has got quickness. Somebody's comparing Purdy to Montana. Hey, if he becomes that, the 49ers will be really happy. You could see Brock Purdy throwing less than 15 times. Yeah, maybe, because the Seattle's got that bad run defense, right? But again, you have to pass enough to set up the run. You look at team tiers here, but you look at Seattle's run defense, that's the weakest facet of their team, number 25. The run offense and the run defense aren't good. That's not good for a team that's about to enter a rain game. Why do I think 4-year starters like Purdy are undervalued? Well, they're undervalued because everybody likes physical tools these days. They see Josh Allen wrecking people. They see the supersonic arm of Patrick Mahomes. Burrow obviously has got a physical skill set too, but everybody wants to just completely blow the top off of the game with a dual threat quarterback, right? Somebody that can win with both his arm and his legs. So when you think that, you automatically say, okay, wait, this guy's got to be 6'3", 6'4". He's got to be Josh Allen's height. And if he's a little bit shorter, all of a sudden you get nervous and you're not going to be drafting, really high based on a guy that's just could cerebrally beat you because you want physical upside using a more valuable draft pick. So Purdy was a 4-year starter, but he's a 4-year starter at, he's listed at 6'1", but he's probably shorter than that. I think I've long maintained that if he was 6'3", probably a first or second round draft pick, right? He's picked really high up in the draft, but he wasn't. So the 4-year starter takes a back seat to perceived physical limitations, and people don't think that it's worth it to use that high of a draft pick on him. For every Brock Purdy, there is a Nick Mullins. Now, Purdy does have the burst that Nick Mullins didn't have, right? He's got a quicker release. Could scouting departments have done a better job? Maybe, but he also had to clean up some of his game from Iowa State to here. That's another thing. The 49ers, you got to give some credit to their coaching staff here. They built an awesome set of coaches to work with Trey Lance, from Brian Griese to Bobby Slowick, the pass game coordinator, to Clay Kubiak, the assistant quarterbacks coach. Consider the fact that Anthony Lynn is also in the offensive rooms, right, as the running backs coach, and Kyle Shanahan himself. That is an infrastructure to get the best out of QBs. And although Lance got hurt earlier this year, so we didn't get to see too much of him, Jimmy Garoppolo certainly benefited from it. And I think it's really clear that Brock Purdy benefited from that infrastructure over the course of this season. Really, really clear that that happened because, I mean, you look at Purdy, where he started and where he is, he himself says he had a lot of stuff to clean up from Iowa State to right now, later in this rookie season. And me watching him, I think he struggled with some of his release points, some of his shorter passes, some of the drop back mechanics in training camp. He looked a lot rougher around the edges back then than, even Trey Lance did on some of the handoff stuff, I thought. Just because the 49ers are asking some different things from their quarterbacks that you don't quite see, even with what Purdy was doing at Iowa State. So he had so many reps that he was able to pick it up quickly. He's able to visualize and see defenses quickly, but Purdy still had to develop over the course of this year. And not every team, and maybe the 49ers are the only team, has a coaching and, just general culture, has an operation that's as strong as the 49ers to develop quarterbacks. So that's, Purdy might have been undervalued by other people because that's how they thought he would develop. But the fact that he came in as a 7th-round pick to the 49ers and they are able to, use the rising tide to lift all boats to that quarterback position with how good of the coaching is, that's what's got him to the point right now. All right, one more question. I'm going to get going. Dad Gibson is going to get a pick 6. Yeah, the 49ers call Gibson Dad, which is funny because he does everything right. He's 32 years old. Over under 3 rushing attempts for Debo. Under. I think 2. I think he gets 2 tomorrow. All right, guys. Thank you so much. It's time to rest. It's around 9 o'clock. It's been the 49ers Seahawks Q&A. One more sleep. 49ers play the Seahawks tomorrow. If you like this, hit that subscribe button. A lot of behind-the-scenes video content coming from the stadium tomorrow. I won't be afraid to get out in the rain and give you guys all the best content from the game. And obviously, subscribe to The Athletic. I'm on Twitter at Lombardi himself. So check it all out. It is going to be a lot of fun at Levi Stadium tomorrow for the playoff opener. 49ers against the Seahawks. Everybody take care. It was great talking to all of you. We'll see you next time.